Been speaking to a lot of Indigenous leaders. I wrote to the Prime Minister in January and I asked 15 pretty basic questions. And I think they're questions that millions of Australians are asking of the government right now. Those questions have never been answered. The Prime Minister has a deliberate strategy not to provide detail to the Australian public. And as we know, the design of the voice doesn't start until after the vote, which is without precedent. That's never happened in 120 years of putting a constitutional question to the people, that we haven't had a constitutional convention and we haven't had the detail properly provided to the Australian public. So I don't think it's any wonder that Australians are saying, sure, I want a better outcome for Indigenous Australians, but why won't the PM explain it to me? And why is the PM yelling at me that I'm not smart enough to understand it, or that I'm racist because I don't support the voice? That's a nonsense approach. There are many big-hearted Australians who want a better outcome for Indigenous Australians at the moment, but are really looking at the detail and wondering why the Prime Minister is keeping that detail from them.
In terms of not blogging.
Sorry, say again? Well, I think until the Prime Minister can explain properly what the voice is, it shouldn't proceed. There's bipartisanship support at the moment for constitutional recognition. We would have 80 or 90% support across the country for constitutional recognition. That is the right and decent thing to do. And I'd sit down with the Prime Minister tomorrow to work that up, to put it to the Australian public in October. But the Australian public is not ready for the voice because the Prime Minister hasn't given them the detail. And Australians won't vote for something they don't understand. And I believe very strongly that the voice could be legislated, that you could have local and regional voices, which is exactly what Carmel Langton recommended in their report. You could demonstrate that to the Australian public and then potentially have a question sometime down the track. But at the moment, there is support for constitutional recognition. There's not support for the voice. And a Canberra-based voice with academics telling people what they should be doing is just not going to work. And I think the Prime Minister needs to take responsibility here. If, as he says, this goes to a referendum in October and it goes down and reconciliation is set back, well, he does that knowingly, because the polls are consistent at the moment. It's not just News Poll, it's not just the Fairfax polls, it's every poll that's indicating that Australians are losing faith in what the Prime Minister is proposing. And the Prime Minister's voice is not going to get up when he won't deliver the basic detail and won't take the Australian public into his trust to explain what it is that this is about. It's a new chapter in our Constitution, in our nation's rule book, is the biggest change proposed to that document in our country's history. And that the Prime Minister would deliberately keep detail from the Australian public is quite remarkable.